still, to the men in the street, the most significant of all these tests of skill and endurance is the famous classic of Le Mans. 24 hours of grueling motoring demanding the utmost of man and machine alike. Once again, the big names assemble to do battle on what many call the greatest race of all. Busily engaged on last-minute preparations. There's much to be done to give car and drivers every chance of at least finishing this day and night endurance test. The time approaches, crowd watch, and then, in a Le Mans start, Sterling Moss was first away. This is typical of the Le Mans scene. Throughout the 24 hours, cars pull into the pits. Feverish activity as fuel is poured in.
This film is an intimate look at the life of inspirational 50s and 60s car designer John Tojeiro and the revered collection of his iconic race cars he built and left behind. And tantalisingly, the 5 cars he started but never finished.
It would be just really lovely to bring his story to a wider audience because, as you say, it is an unknown story, really. And it's an interesting story, and he did an awful lot for motorsport that was never really recognised.
John Tojeiro was an Englishman of Portuguese descent who had a vision to create beautiful and competitive racing cars for which he would become renowned. Tojeiro, affectionately known as Todge, was at the heart of British racing in the 50s and 60s, designing in excess of 50 innovative race cars.
I think motor racing in the 50s, the 60s, particularly through sports prototypes and GT cars, is simply an iconic period. Beautiful cars that represent great innovation on track, the reputation, fame and success of the drivers who were period at the time, and the legend that they've gone on to become.
His cars competed at Goodwood, Monza, Silverstone and Le Mans, along with a slew of other prestigious circuits. And his cars were raced by nearly every known racing driver of the era, the cream of British motorsport. Sir Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, Jack Sears, Sir John Whitmore, Innes Ireland and Jack Brabham.
It's amazing when you consider they're built in 1953, the car I drove this morning. Phenomenal cars, the speed that they go is incredible what they've achieved, and you know the level of development at that time. These guys were very brave, far braver than I was when I was driving professionally.
Sir Jackie Stewart achieved notable finishes in the Tojeiro Buick and the Tojeiro Ford in the early days of his racing career prior to signing to the Tyrrell team.
He was very well known, actually. He was associated with quite a lot of projects, as we've known in history, and even today his name is synonymous with classic car racing, and still is.
John Tojeiro was a member of the prestigious British Racing Drivers Club as a recognised designer of race cars. And if he were to be remembered for one car alone, he designed the AC Ace, with the addition of the small block Ford V8 engine, fitted by Carroll Shelby. That car became the mighty AC Cobra.
Well, it's been fascinating learning about John and Tojeiro today. I think the 50s and 60s were the golden era of motorsport when, you know, it was very accessible. It was all about big, loud engines and exciting drivers. You know, it really had the glamour and excitement that some might say is missing from contemporary motorsport.
John left behind an extraordinary legacy of race-winning motorcars that is still cherished, revered and raced today, of which only 50 cars still exist, and they are highly sought after.
The works teams were there, but there was other individuals who added individuality to the stuff, and a lot of top drivers were in these cars. Jack Brabham, Graham Hill, Dick Prothero drove this car and other cars of his, so they were certainly highly rated.
Before John's death in 2005, and with the help of his son Robin, a handful of space-frame chassis were begun to complete an exclusive run of 5 Tojeiro Jaguars. These cars were to be FIA compliant for racing at historic motorsport events. But with John suffering from Parkinson's disease and failing health, the project was never completed.
Well, it just seemed a man working on minimal sort of finance managed to put out cars that were competitive in the day, and most of the cars were cracking looking cars as well.
These 5 chassis have remained untouched in the original workshop of John Tojeiro. It is Robin's plan to revitalise this very British heritage mark, with its prestigious racing status, by completing the first of the 5 iconic Tojeiro Jaguar engine cars that were started before John's death.
Well, he was one of those innovators, just came out of the war and wanted to build something that went a bit faster and build his own motor special, and people liked that, and they went on from there, like old Chapman and all the other people who produced racing cars in the 50s and 60s.
Robin Tojeiro, an engineer in his own right, will oversee the meticulous construction of these cars. Working from John's original drawings and designs, and with his father's unique inspiration and eye for stunning body lines, Robin Tojeiro will build the cars his father never had the chance to finish.
But really, I think we all know about Jaguar and the C-types and D-types. So hearing John's story and how important his cars were in that era, and perhaps he didn't get the recognition because he wasn't the high street brand that Jaguar had, but he certainly attracted some of the better drivers of the era and had some great success.
The film will follow the progress of building the first new Tojeiro car as it emerges phoenix-like from the ashes, whilst telling the compelling story of how John Tojeiro came to be at the epicentre of 50s and 60s motor racing during what was arguably the golden era of motorsport.
It would be lovely to see a bit of recognition for all his work against all adversity, I suppose.
The film will culminate with the revelation of the first unique new Tojeiro race car, as it is released to the fanfare of the motorsporting world.